Hi, it's Kirby. It is March 5th, 2025. It's Wednesday. It was supposed to rain today in New York, but thank goodness we seem to be skipping the rain, which frankly I prefer. So today I am going to share with you something that I am working on. So we know, for example, that Naomi Campbell, a quote supermodel, end quote, appears to have been involved in almost every transportation ring we have ever discussed. However, she's not the first one. And really, what we know about her is very, very little. So, I've made some pretty dramatic discoveries that I'm currently sharing in my newsletter on Substack. And I'm going to be going over some of that with you here today. However, before I get started, I want to thank Abigail M. I want to thank Shari G. I want to thank Gary M. and Alicia T. for being kind enough. I'm so super grateful of going to my website and making a one-time contribution. This really helps. It is the reason that I am able to upload more information here. And even if you guys were to do a super thanks on this channel, all you have to do is click the three little dots under the screen and do a super thanks. The platform allows me to keep almost 50% on my website. I can skip the middleman and keep about 90, but it helps. It all helps to keeping me pulling at these threads. And so, who thought that someone like Gerald Ford would be of interest? I would have been the last one, to be honest. But I have been working and working and working on so many of these people that I found that, like Jeff, he invested in a modeling agency. You will not find this on his Wikipedia page. What you will find, maybe, is that he, quote, was a model in his younger years. However, his connection to modeling is very peculiar because it includes the CIA's MK Ultra project. And it raises the question as to the role of, let's say, someone like Naomi Campbell. And it raises the question as to the other models. And it raises the question as to what they remember. Because perhaps what they remember is only a fragment of what happened to them, as you will soon learn when I get into this story. And so I'm going to read some of this stuff to you. I'm going to probably skip around. However, on November 29th, 1963, exactly 1 week after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas's Dealey Plaza, his vice president turned newly elected president Lyndon B. Johnson called Gerald Ford, who served in the House of Representatives for nearly 25 years, commencing 1948 through 1974, and he appointed him as a member of the Warren Commission. The short and surprisingly jovial conversation, literally, I included a link. I am reading from one of the articles that I uploaded to my newsletter on Substack. And, you would not think that a week to the day of the unaliving of Kennedy, these people would be in such a jovial and good mood. There was not really a word said about feeling of grief or anything. There was just nothing there. So I included a link to that conversation because he called him during the Thanksgiving holiday, and the reason for his call was to ask him to prepare a biography of the accused unaliver, Lee Harvey Oswald. And for this, he and Earl Warren, the Chief Justice of the United States from 1953 to 1969, and for whom the Warren Commission is named, interviewed Jacob Leon Rubinstein, born March 25th, 1911 through January 3rd, 1967, better known as Jack Ruby. Except that my investigation into Ford's life will demonstrate this was not the first time Ruby crossed Ford's path, or vice versa. And so, like, none of my findings have made their way into the history books, clearly, right? I guess most of you who know what I work in is not your typical news story, but these are things that I discover. I suspect my findings will never make it into the history books. What Ford did is that he ensured that the single bullet theory, which most people today have trouble swallowing, let's say, was made clear because he changed the wording to read the bullet entered Kennedy at the back of his neck. And so, while the mainstream media reporting was that, oh, well, Ford changed ever so slightly the Warren Commission's sentence, it was really not such a slight change, because what it did was that it promoted the ongoing, let's say, misinformation that remains to present day. And, that was 1963. This is 2025. And so Ford has other curious connections, as we're going to explore today, in the form of MK Ultra spy Candy Jones. Now, I go into his political career. I go into several things that are of importance that one would need to know about, let's say, his connection to Nixon, his connection to Eisenhower. However, he had a best friend with whom he shared an apartment, a very gay guy and at the time, clearly it was not legal to be gay. We had this in the United States, we had this in the UK, and this particular person were both modeling for, I'm not going to name the modeling agencies, guys. I'm just going to give you the basic. I am going to talk about Candy Jones, but I'm just going to give you some basic information. So that initially he and his roommate, and so it makes one wonder if Ford was actually best friends and sharing a residence with a closeted gay guy. We have to wonder, well, were they an item? And I think they were. And the reason I think they were is because I connect Ford to what was happening in Omaha, Nebraska. And I do that in chapter 1 of this series. Chapter 3 will be falling very soon. I suppose some people say dropping. I say falling. They pretty much mean the same thing. When he invested in this modeling company, he was studying to become an attorney at Yale Law School, and he was actually a 33-degree Freemason. And, I show a marriage certificate of his parents. I showed that his stepfather had been heavily involved with disadvantaged youths. We find this time and time again, these connections to the Boy Scouts of America, which in fact, Ford was a Boy Scout. I suspect that Ford was perhaps one of the first men who became president, let's say, after being in the same position as, let's say, Paul Benassi, or a similar position as Paul Benassi, Troy Bonner, as some of the survivors we have come to hear about. And I will show step by step why I believe this. And there are other connections that bring us straight to present day and even connect to Ghislaine Maxwell. So these connections of the previous generation, so again, multi-generational stuff, is a red flag for all of us. It should be for all of us. So if you look at allegations against the Boy Scouts, you will find many of them. I have also written about E.H. Harriman's founding of the Boy Scouts and about Henry Jarecki's Virgin Island underprivileged organization, of which King Charles III is a member and whom he visited, becoming integrated into now the Boy Scouts, the whole Boy Scouts organization. So there are these groups like Boys Town and the Boy Scouts, which has now changed its name. Remember, when these large organizations change their names or a building changes its name, there is because uh, they want to put a positive spin on something and make you forget perhaps something that happened before that did not have such a positive look at it. So Ford, via his birth father, his name is Leslie Lynch King, and he was born in Omaha, Nebraska. He is related, frankly, to very high-end and prominent families, which I will not name, but which you can find in the article itself. Now, again, the agency that Ford, quote, invested in, like Jeff invested in a modeling agency, is very likely an intelligence cutout, because uh, during this so-called modeling firm, it was connected to, let's say, Bob Hope's USO shows, whom Bryce Taylor has alleged in her book, Thanks for the Memories, was her MK Ultra handler. And there's additional information about Hope, which I am including in part 3, that again is not readily found. However, there are many things that make no sense unless you're really looking at these things. Now, a lot of the Kennedy wives, and I'm not going to even name which ones, but Kennedy is a thread through which a lot of this stuff can be looked at, have their origins with one or both of the modeling agencies that a younger Ford was involved with. So were they making, as Ira Levin pointed out in his 1975 book, The Stepford Wives, was he creating the Stepford Wives? And I think it's something that should no longer not be taken seriously. I think one has to look at the role of mind control. Martha Mitchell is the only one who broke rank. It was slipped during the very short so-called documentary that was on Netflix. It was slipped by one of the people who spoke about Martha that her programming was off. And Martha Mitchell, who is one of my personal heroes, I know that she named certain places in New York as being MK Ultra places where the CIA would program their people. There are other places that I will be discussing in part 3 that are also responsible for creating what we feel are these supermodels or these very high-end actresses that are known the world over, and these wives of these very wealthy and very powerful men. So that Candy Jones, by the way, her birth name is Jessica Arlene Wilcox. She was born December 31st, 1925, and her last day on earth was January 18th, 1990. Married her boss, meaning Ford's best friend, a closeted gay guy, when she was 22 and he was 34. And she really worked for him as a model for 5 years before their wedding, which was covered in the 1946 issue of a CIA-owned magazine. And, for this to be covered in a CIA-owned magazine just completely continues to underscore the fact that she was a not just she was an asset or was turned into an asset for the three-letter agency, but that the modeling company, in fact, was also a cutout used for this. And what happened was she was married to him for a short while. She had 3 children with him. She married someone else. He discovered that she had a completely different personality. He didn't understand where this new personality was coming from, and he knew a little bit about basically putting somebody in a trance, and he kind of did that with her, and he discovered that she had, in fact, he was like an amateur hypnotist, and he decided to put her in like a light trance. He uh, decided to tape what she said, and he discovered that she had a different personality. So she had the typical split, that butterfly, that splitting of the mind. And under this new personality, it was discovered that she had been trained to be a beautiful model assassin who would wear a wig, go out on assignments, be tortured, have horrible things done to her, and she would not break at all, because and then when she reverted to being normal, because she would be let go by these hostile forces, let's say, because really she couldn't say anything because she didn't remember what she had done, then she would go back to her quote normal life, anything but normal, right? If you are changing personalities, putting on a wig, and leaving the country to do a mission because you have been programmed to do this. And then she was also, the programming included an unalivement trigger. We have heard this from Paul Benassi in his conversation. We have heard this in various cases. And it makes one wonder about some of these unalivements. And I'm not talking about Gene Hackman, by the way. That was a clear outside case of let's get rid of these people. No one will ever convince me that these people died of quote natural causes. However, I wrote about this, and I wrote about Ford's odd connection to this woman Candy, who became a virtual zombie who was visiting training camps, military bases, and secret medical facilities everywhere. And she was taught how to unalive with her bare hands, conditioned to resist pain, shown how to counter interrogation techniques. And then, I really, really go into this. I mean, this happened before Kathy O'Brien's book, Transformation of America, before any of these other stories came to light. And it does raise a lot of questions. And so I did go into more of this story, which is going to drop in the next, let's say, day or two. However, the first 2 parts are riveting, even for me. And as I have been continuing to do my research, I mean, not only discovered that this is connected to clearly the Franklin allegations, but to several other, let's call them rings, that are not even in the news anymore, and to strange happenings that, again, are connected to Hollywood. Anyway, I'm going to leave the suspense there. I want to thank you guys for liking this podcast and for taking a moment to leave a well thought out comment that's sort of, on target. I'd love to hear your response to what I am working on, because I have several really great series going, and I like to start a new one while I'm still working on old ones because I like to mix it up. And so far, this one has gotten really good reviews. All right, guys, have a good day. Bye.